right, good evening, everybody. It's just a few seconds after 8 o'clock in Ontario, 6 p.m. in Alberta, and various other times across the country. We are coast to coast. And last night, we know we had people from as far east as St. John's, Newfoundland, and as far west as Victoria, BC. So welcome to everybody tonight. My name is Peter Stock. I'm with Homeschool today, and we've got our second seminar this week. This one's on choosing curriculum. And I'm a homeschool dad myself. As I mentioned, I live in Ontario. We're really proud of what we've been able to pull together for Homeschool.today. It's a new website that's designed to serve you, people who are interested in learning more about homeschooling or maybe even getting started. And there's a lot of great information on the website. If you haven't seen it yet, please check it out, homeschool.today. There's answers to a lot of questions, a lot of useful information, and there's province-specific information there too. So it doesn't matter where you live in Canada, you can find out what the rules are in your province for getting registered and moving forward with homeschooling. All right, we had a lot of participation last night and a lot of great questions. I'm guessing that a number of the people on with us tonight were with us last night, and you're here tonight to learn more specifics about curriculum. So we're looking forward to hearing Patty Marler in just a minute as she talks about that. Letting a few more people into the meeting here. All right. So it's a tough time in Canada. We know that, but we want to give you a little more certainty about the way forward. I know that a lot of people aren't feeling a lot of certainty about the school options they have within the public system at the moment. And so home education seems like the right option for a lot of people right now. So we want to help you through that. Tonight, the format will be Patty Marler will make a presentation on curriculum, and hopefully a lot of the questions you have, at least the general questions you have, or even questions you didn't know you had until we get to them, will be answered in the presentation. But there may be other things that you have questions about. What we'll do is we'll ask people to submit their questions in the chat. You can do that at any time, and we'll keep a running total of all those. And once Patty's presentation is done, we'll then turn to the question and answer phase, and we'll start to answer those questions that you have. We'll try to answer the general questions first, questions that might apply to everybody, and we'll leave the more specific questions for a little later on if we need to. If you don't get your question answered tonight because we run out of time, then please don't hesitate to send us the same question through the homeschool.today website. You will get an answer. We're not trying to exclude everybody, but we do have limited time. So, all right, well, let's turn to our presentation now. Patty Marler is, and many of you met her last night, veteran homeschool mom. She homeschooled for 22 years in Alberta, her 4 children. Also has served in a variety of leadership roles in the home education movement in Alberta, dealing with ministers of education and bureaucrats as well. She's a real leader and knows this territory really well. So anybody who participated last night knows that Patty has a great presentation style, and I look forward to hearing what she has to say to us tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Patty now.
Well, thanks, Peter. I appreciate your opening. Just so everyone knows, I am in my second month of retirement from homeschooling. So my retirement from homeschooling is very fresh. So yeah, it's a new world now that I'm completed. But it's very exciting to me that I get to continue to talk to people about homeschooling, because homeschooling really is my passion. It really is very much what I love to do. So I'm just trying to get my settings set up here. So if you'll just bear with me for 1 second. There we go. Okay. It is going in a funny line. I want to make sure I can see what I'm doing. So I'll from the beginning. There we go. That's better. Peter introduced homeschooling or homeschool.today and said it was a fabulous resource for new homeschoolers. And I agree completely with that. But I also think it's an amazing resource for seasoned homeschoolers as well. There is so much information on there that as I went through all of the details, I thought this is an amazing resource for myself. There were things that I went, you know, I didn't learn this till well into my homeschooling career. So please check out that website and use it because it is amazing. So these are my children. These are the fruit of homeschooling. It's always wonderful to share photos of your family. So these are our homeschooling experiments. They all turned out well, just to let you know. So be encouraged that homeschooling is a great, amazing way to raise a family. One of the big questions that people ask, and especially now, when many people haven't even thought about homeschooling before, and they're coming and they're going, can my children succeed when homeschooling? I could tell you about my 4, but I'm going to look at a little bit of home education research, some research that's available on the homeschool.today website that looks at how successful homeschooling is. On this chart, it shows the highest level of education attained. So we're comparing the general population of students who have been educated in a brick and mortar school compared to homeschooled adults. And if you look at this point, this study was done on homeschoolers who had not been out of school very long. So there was a low degree of master's graduated students. But compared to the general population, many homeschoolers, there was a greater percentage of homeschoolers who went to university and got a degree, slightly more who got a diploma, slightly more with the trade. Fewer with some, which is interesting. That sort of implies that more people graduated from university than just received some. And then a diploma equivalency, that's significantly higher than the general population. So if you look at this graph and say, can my student go to university? Can they get post-secondary education? The answer definitely is yes. And when we look at how they're doing financially, are they successful in terms of being able to support themselves when they're done, being able to support a family, which after all is the goal of our education, is to be able to be a citizen, to be able to have a family and raise them, to be able to work for yourself. We see the dark sides here are the homeschooled adults. And as compared to students who were educated in brick and mortar schools, they're very close in terms of the wages that they would receive. More home educated students are become self-employed, look at self-employment, and more interesting that more home educated students make investments or are working in the investment field. Fewer in government, some receiving child tax benefits, so that would mean that they have children. Comparable, slightly more on EI, and then other occupations is high, slightly higher for home educated students. So we're really talking success here, and yes, your child can succeed when homeschooling. So now we're going to talk about the focus of this session, which is choosing homeschool curriculum. This, for some people at this point in your life, can seem like a daunting and overwhelming idea. simply making that choice to homeschool has been forced on many people, or people have been encouraged to consider that option and haven't had much time to think about it and make that decision. So once you make it, now the idea, what am I going to teach, can be a little bit daunting. So I want to help you to be able to provide a framework for thinking so that you can make good decisions about curriculum, and then to provide you some program and curriculum suggestions that are useful for homeschooling and that many homeschoolers have found success with. I just want to talk a little bit before we get talk about curriculum, is who needs to choose curriculum. So school at home or distance learning options, curriculum choice is not required for that. The school programs are created by the school teachers, the material is provided by the school, and then the parents administer the school program at home. There are some things you need to know about that curriculum. When you do that sort of curriculum at home, it tends to be a bit more onerous on the parents. There is little flexibility in terms of the program content, the delivery and the timing of the delivery. So it's more rigid than in a traditional homeschooling setting. There also tends to be a lot more reporting that tends to serve the school better than serve the school as compared to serving the parent and the child. And the goals are set by the teacher in the school for each subject. And just be aware that there may be less time for extras than if you choose a traditional parent-directed homeschooling format. Homeschooling, parent-directed, we went through this last night, but I think it's important that we take a look at this information again. In homeschooling or parent-directed education, the programming is created by the parents to serve their child, and it serves their child best in the home environment. The educational resources are chosen by the parent, and they're driven by the student needs and abilities and the parents' educational desires for their children. When you choose the curriculum for your child, you can focus on your child's strengths, build on their weaknesses gently, and watch them flourish. There's great flexibility in content and delivery when you choose the materials not just the materials, when you choose a homeschooling parent-directed environment as compared to an online or school-delivered program, there's much more flexibility. The goals you meet are yours. Your specific family needs can be met, and there's less time required to complete the work and more time to explore a student's individual interests. So many people say, well, what do kids in school learn? How am I going to teach the same things? And does it matter if I teach the same things that they're learning in school? Well, if you're concerned about what your child would be learning in school, each province is going to have available on their provincial websites a provincial scope and sequence for each subject. So what that means is you can go on and say grade 4 math and look at the concepts that are typically covered in your school, in your province, for that grade and that subject. So you can check out your province's website to look at all of that material. Now, be careful because sometimes there can be a lot of words, so it can have limited value when you go there, but I do encourage you to check out what your province has your students learn if that is a concern of yours, if you're saying, I need to make sure that I'm teaching similar things to what they're learning in school. What I want you to think about is that many provinces will have the same curriculum, but depending on the school board or even the school that your student goes to, they will use different resources to meet the curriculum requirements. So just because you are using books that are different than what may be used in your school, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be fulfilling curriculum requirements. And another thing to consider is that there are different goals in each province. So if we take a step back and look at the big picture and say, well, will my student be able to get into college if they desire so? Well, colleges don't just accept students from their province. They will accept students from all across Canada and internationally. So they're not going to require the exact specific curriculum or resources that your province used in order for your student to be able to attain admittance to a post-secondary institution. And then finally, you may want to set goals for your kids that are different than what the school may be doing. Schools really are set up to serve a lot of children all at once. And you now have the flexibility to serve your family in your environment, and you can do that in very interesting and creative ways. So homeschool development, it's very important that you decide what is most important to teach so that your child can succeed in life. Developing your program, that's the main questions that you want to ask yourself. What does my child need to be able to succeed in life? You may want to consider your worldview, your perspective on life when choosing curriculum. You'll want to look at character development. It's important not just when we educate our children, not just to look at the academics, but it's important to also look at the character development. Who is your child going to be when they are done their education? And then the academics, of course. What are the subjects that we are going to tackle? I talked about worldview. And so what is worldview? Well, worldview is your beliefs and your convictions and how those form the basis of your decision making. All of us have a perspective that we come from and things that are important to us when we're making decisions. Unbiased education is an illusion. Every curriculum, every program of studies, every teacher has a perspective from which material is presented. So everyone has a bias in creating material and in presenting it. You need to choose from which perspective, which worldview you will teach your children. Where do you place your value? Is it most important to you that you have something set up so that your child may return to school? There's a lot of conversation around that. I want to homeschool right now, temporarily. So if that's important to you, then you will choose some of the things you do around that as your primary focus. Your faith may be very important, and so you want curriculum that's consistent with your Christianity, with your secularism, whatever your faith may be, you will want curriculum that's consistent with that. You may have a passion for certain special subjects: social justice, world politics, history, environment. These things are all things that you want to consider when you're figuring out how you're going to and what you're going to teach your students. Character. I'm going to start, I'm going to look at some character qualities as well. Like I said, being at home provides a unique opportunity for us to develop our children and develop their behaviors, their personality qualities, their values, their virtues. And so you can spend more time on that as you're home educating. Who do you want your child to be? Do you want them to have the virtues of patience, kindness? Maybe humility is important to you, or purity, self-control, charity. Maybe you want a child who's very charitable with the things that they own, or you're desiring to raise a diligent student and adult. There are lots of character qualities that now that you're homeschooling, you can really spend some time thinking about. And I would encourage you to write down what character qualities you desire for your student. Do you want your child to make decisions that center around ethics and morality, that they be an ethical and moral person? Do you want them to be a socially just person or politically aware? These are many things that you can work on when you're homeschooling. And an engaged citizen. It's very important that we be engaged citizens, and you can develop that in your students. And then finally, as you're developing your program plan, the academics, the knowledge that you will work on that's necessary for your student to become a productive citizen in our world. Academics is the third component. It's that knowledge component. What subjects will I teach? So if we're looking at academic development, we can look at core subjects. What are the core subjects that we're going to look at? We're going to look at English. We want our children to be able to read, to write, to spell. These are all very important skills. Math, we want them to be able to do math, science, history, and geography. For some people, other languages is very important. So you want to be able to include that in what you're doing. Arts and music are a component of education that you may have more time to explore and spend time with when you are homeschooling. So how are you going to teach all this? I just dumped a whole bunch of stuff, and I think many of you may be feeling even more overwhelmed right now. Hang on, because you don't have to feel overwhelmed with this. How are you going to teach all of this? Homeschool.today looks at various educational methods. So if you go to the website of homeschool.today, you will see that there are many approaches that you can look at. So Charlotte Mason, for example, is a beautiful, gentle way of approaching homeschooling that has a lot of journaling, that has a lot of nature, a lot of science, a lot of exploration. You may be interested in a classical approach where you focus on the great books and you work on memorizing, where you work on communication, on children be able to talk deeply about the subjects that they're looking at. Eclectic approach, which is kind of the way I did it, where you take a piece of everything that you like and you just sort of mesh your homeschooling around that. All of these are various formats that you can use, and you can use bits and pieces of each format to help you in your homeschooling. So like I said, I encourage you to go to the homeschooling.today website and explore those. Okay, now I have to get back. There we are. So how do I choose one of those formats? Well, we also have a learning preference quiz on our homeschool.today website. So if you take that learning preference quiz, it will help to direct you into one of these methodologies that seems to suit you best. There's a number of questions that you take, so just click through those. You can try it a number of times and see if, well, what if I think about this? And what if I change this, to see if there are several options that may be available and for you to look at and consider. So now we'll look at that sort of a way, methods to teach, ways to teach your students. But what about making those curriculum choices? How are you going to do that? Well, first of all, you may want to, I would encourage you to understand your provincial requirements, the legal requirements within your province. If you go to the homeschool.today website, you will be able to click on a free overview of provincial and territorial forms, legislation, and information that may tell you if there are certain requirements that you must meet under the legislation in your province. In addition, HSLDA has for their members detailed summaries of the laws of each province through the members website. So you can purchase, that's one of the benefits of purchasing one of our memberships, is that you have access to that material. So as a home educator, some people may not be interested in investing a lot of money at this point, or you may not have a lot of money to invest into homeschooling. Homeschooling doesn't have to be expensive. There are a lot of free online resources available, printable online materials, apps that you can use. You can go to the library, you can use their resources. Again, homeschooling.today, we have our own digital library available for members. So you have access to an abundance of good books on that website. You don't have to sift through the library to try and figure out which book is good, or find the good books, or encourage your children not to read these ones, but to read these ones. We've tried to provide books that are very solid reading, only books that are solid reading on our website. You can also purchase very inexpensive resources, especially for young children, dollar store workbooks, or big bulk store complete curriculum in a year, and use those as the basis of your studies. So you don't have to spend a lot of money. And there are a lot of experienced homeschoolers who are willing to sell their resources. So secondhand resources are available. There are a lot of buy and sell homeschool websites. So I encourage you to look those up, the buy and sell homeschool website. So let's get into some nitty gritty now. Reading, writing. Well, what are some curriculum ideas? Well, learning to read. So there's going to be a bit more detail in this than in the previous section. The previous section tried to establish a perspective for you to have when you are considering which material you will buy. So now we're at which material will I buy? So learning to read. There are many resources that home educators have used. All About Reading is a very popular one right now. I use Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. Many people have students who just seem to learn to read on their own. There's lots of reading apps. And what I've done here is I've tried to highlight free and inexpensive alternatives with a star. So if that's something that's important to you, then please feel free to look at those. Many of these other resources are not expensive either, but these are especially inexpensive, the starred resources. Reading. Okay, I just want to sit here for a while in the reading section, because to me, this is the core and the foundation of what a good homeschooling program looks like. If you have ever been to a homeschooler's home, you will notice a lot of books. There's a lot of reading that goes on. I encourage you to read to your children. Your children can read at a level here, but their comprehension is here. So when you read to them, you can read much more complex, much more difficult books, much more involved books than they could read on their own. We used to spend the bulk of our days reading, with me reading to our children, with them listening to audiobooks, with them reading to themselves. I really encourage you to do that. Novels, poetry, short stories, news articles. And plays are actually one thing that, until they get older, I would encourage you just to have them watch those, because they were created to be watched, not created to be read. So watch good plays with your students. And again, that digital library is available for reading material. Writing. How do you encourage your student to write? It's interesting. One in Charlotte Mason and the classical approach to education, copy work is emphasized a lot, and that is not something that most students have a lot of familiarity with anymore in school. The idea of copying good pieces of work. When you do that, when you have your student do that, you can work on so many areas. A student who copies a paragraph will copy the punctuation appropriately. They will copy capitals and small letters appropriately. They will learn spelling from copying words. Copy experience is a very good skill, and it costs nothing to do. All you have to do is get a good book that is written well and have your student copy a sentence, a paragraph, depending on the age of your child. This can go for a very long time. And they will also learn good grammar in doing this. You can also do things, write to family, write to pen pals. Those are very inexpensive ways to have your child write. An excellent program that many home educators take advantage of is the Institute for Excellence in Writing, an inexpensive writing program by a dynamic presenter, Andrew Pudewa. He keeps his students engaged, makes writing so simple. So if you want your child to learn how to write an essay well, this is an excellent resource. You may also purchase some grammar workbooks to study if you'd like. That is completely up to you. Spelling. Lots of online spelling apps. Again, that copy work. You choose words to study. If a child is writing a letter to their pen pal and they get a word spelled wrong as they send it, then you just write those down on a list and you have your students work on those. That's where your spelling lists can come from, is from their own personal writing. Latin roots sounds daunting, but it's really not. It's really an amazing way to develop a student's spelling, because if you know that the Latin root bio, B-I-O, means body, means the human body, then you will always be able to spell words that that begin with bio. Or I'm trying to think of some photo, like photosynthesis. Photo, photo is the root or is a word that means light. So now your student will be able to understand that photo and everything they do means light. So Latin roots are really a fun thing to learn, an interesting thing to learn, and they become very valuable in post-secondary studies as well. And you can start that very young with your children. There are multitudes of curriculum available in spelling that you can choose from. So math and curriculum ideas. Math and arithmetic ideas. Again, I think actually the homeschool environment does an exceptional job on their math curriculum. I love so many homeschool math programs because they are actually laid out so that children can learn relatively independently. Some of them are set up so that the child can learn completely independently. So some of the teaching textbooks is an online program where the child is taught, does their work, it's corrected, and they can do it all the way up to calculus, high school materials with little involvement required by the parent. So if you have limited time, you may have a lot of children, or you may be a single parent or a working parent, that's online programs such as that may be good. ABECA, Matthew C., the manipulatives, Bob Jones University, Saxon Math, Singapore Math, all of these are really solid math programs. I love math, and I love math that is good math. I use Singapore Math, but I only use the teaching material. One thing you want to know is that don't ever be tied to your curriculum so much that it becomes a burden. One thing that I have found in many math curriculums is that it teaches to ad nauseum, to where children don't want to do it anymore. So often I would have my children just skip every other question, or just do the new concepts and then every other question in the reviews. So, and I only, sometimes I didn't even use the extra workbooks that could have been an option for programs. I just used the basic programs, or the basic, some of the basic questions. So one thing to know is once your child attains an understanding, a conceptualization of math concepts, you can move on. You don't have to flog that horse till it doesn't want to learn anymore. Lots of programs. If you're on a budget, lots of online sheets that you can use. You can supplement math as well with math games, with logic puzzles, with geo boards. These will help your child's critical thinking and math conceptualization. And when they're in high school, if you use some of these advanced programs, you can also use Key or YouTube to supplement learning if you're having them write your provincial grade 12 exams, just to make sure that they know all the material and that they are ready to write those exams. Lots of good supplemental material. And then real life math. Real life math is very doable for children who are young. You can do it almost exclusively. You can teach your children math by shopping. You have them, well, we are in COVID times. So you may have them look at things online and have them help you calculate how much things will be online. I was actually, this is going to sound awful, but I was actually very sad when the GST went from 7% to 5%, because 7 times tables are not often used. And the GST being 7% allowed my children to use their math skills with the 7 times tables a lot. Now, I don't want taxes to go back up to 7%, the GST, don't get me wrong on that. But it just shows that you can use what we have. Don't ever let your child purchase something without calculating tax, not only because it's not a good idea, but also because it's good math skills. Cooking, fractions are used all the time in cooking. Painting, figuring out what the area of a wall is, figuring out how much seed you need to purchase for your lawn, doing math games with cards. I used to have competitions with my son, and here's a tip. Sometimes competitive children, my son was very competitive, they love the challenge of competition. So we would put cards down, and together he would have a stack and I would have a stack. We'd either add them up and see who could add them faster, or we would lay them down and see who could multiply them together faster. Lots of fun ways to do math, and inexpensive. Science curriculum ideas. There are lots of science programs that you can use. Apologia science textbooks, lots of videos, Khan Academy, books you can get from the library. One thing that I would suggest is that a good experiment book that's age appropriate for your child is really a great thing to have, because you can spend a lot of your science programming time just on doing really fun experiments with your kids, and they will learn a lot by doing that. How-to books, an amazing resources. YouTube videos, kids can learn so much just by having questions and trying to find those answers. Again, our library or your public library are good resources for those. Everyday science application, gardening, building, sports movements analysis. I used to do the bulk of our science in the summer because I found summer much more conducive to experimenting outside. Pond science, plant science, there's animal science, dissection. We used to do lots of dissections that were quite informal. You can do a lot of science in very interesting and fun ways. History and geography. I used to hate history. Oh, I hated it. Now I love it. I love it because of all the good resources. Canadian history is something that's very important for our students. Donna Ward is a homeschool book publisher, and she has created an amazing number of resources. There's a documentary, Canada, People's History, that you can use online. The Story of Canada, a number of good Canadian history books that are interesting to read and can captivate your children's attention. And you don't have to bore them with dates and places. Have students learn real stories when they're studying history, because they will remember one real story way more than being forced to memorize dates and times and events. One good captivating story will do more for you than a month's worth of memorizing dates and times. Lots of good history overview for all of history. and some of these are in audio form as well. So if you would like to be able to put on an audio book for your students to listen to, then some of these are available online. Story of the World, Diana Waring, lots of these are available online, and they're good resources. Again, historical fiction. When I talked about reading, you can do two things at once by reading to your students and reading them historical fiction. That's a wonderful thing, a wonderful way to capture two subjects at once. Geography games. We did most of our geography with games. So 10 days in Asia, 10 days in Europe, 10 days in Africa. You get the picture. The game of Risk. You can learn a lot by using board games. In all of your curricula, there are math games. There are a multitude of critical thinking games. The options are just expansive when it comes to learning games, to educational games, which can be a really fun way of educating your children. And again, use your local library, use HSLDA, our membership library. And then for the extra pieces of curriculum. Physical education. Physical education is very fun in homeschooling. Getting out and running, getting out. You can do phys ed independently or with groups of other students. It's very easy to approach physical education. I might ask that people not turn their microphone on. If you could please leave your microphone setting to off. Thank you. So you can set out some goals for your children, some things you'd like to do daily or weekly or to complete in a year. Music. Music is a subject that many home educators spend significant time on. One thing that you will notice is that the core curriculum requirements don't take anywhere near as long as a whole day to complete. That leaves you with a good portion of the day to work on extra things like music, Bible study, arts, crafts, typing, logic, service work, having your children volunteer, work experience. There are lots and lots of opportunities that your students can take advantage of, a lot more when they're home than when they are in school for 8 hours of the day. You have more time to do these things. This is an example of physical education. So homeschool track meet, real track meet here going on. This is our homeschool badminton group. I coordinated homeschool badminton and homeschool volleyball every year. So these are all home educated kids. We would rent a gym, we would do badminton, we would do volleyball, really fun. So another component is round the house things and life skills. You know, I'm going to say that in our household, it was Dad who did many of these things with our kids. Dads can be very involved in your students' learning, the other parents, just building things, doing carpentry with the kids, fixing things around the house is an amazing opportunity for your students to learn. How often are school kids at home when the plumber comes? Well, in homeschooling, they are always there. So they can learn about plumbing with Dad, with the plumber. They can learn about electrical things. They can work on your vehicles. They can be involved in agriculture, building gardens, construction, Woodworking, that may become something that they're just interested in and that they like doing. Fashion and cosmetology, and hospitality. Learning how to be hospitable in your own home is a good skill to learn or to teach our children. So many opportunities. You can take time to talk about careers, to really look at what it means to be a plumber, what it means to be an X-ray technician. If you have older students, you can really do some good career exploration, look at their career readiness. There's a lot of excellent opportunities. Cooking. Have your children get involved in the cooking, the organizing of your home, and your home management. And yes, that means they do the cleaning with you. So that's one of the benefits, but it also is going to need to happen more now that your children are home all the time. So one thing that you can consider too, if the idea of purchasing, all of those individual components or gathering those individual components is a little bit daunting, you could look at all-in-one curriculum packages as well. Classical Conversations will have those, and that comes from a classical perspective. Sunlight has them. There's a number of places where you can get those, which leads me to home education resource providers. We have a list of home education resource providers on our website that you can look at. There's no way I can possibly go through all of the resources that are available, because each of these resource providers will have thousands of items that are available for you to look at, for you to possibly purchase. So take advantage again of our homeschool.today website and go under resources and look at the resources that we have available on our website. Developing a plan. I encourage you to develop a plan. The time spent planning now will help make your year much easier. Something that I learned fairly early on in my homeschooling was if I had a plan, it would make the days when I felt like I was pulling my hair out or like I didn't know what to do with my children anymore. It would make those times much easier. And it actually improved my confidence as well in what we were doing. I would have my children leave my home for a complete day or a complete weekend when I developed my plan. I had someone take my children. And at one point, my husband said to me, well, why don't you just go away? And I said, I can't. I need access to all of my stuff to be able to do this well. So I would lay out all my resources on my living room floor, and I would write a plan, pick books, pick things, pick subjects that we wanted to do. I would focus on subjects that we could do together, but develop, slightly more difficult things for kids who are a little bit older, much more difficult things for kids who were way older, and really easy things for the little kids. This picture is a bit of an anomaly. It's one of the few days that my children ever sat at the table like this and worked together. So please do not think that this is a typical homeschooling day necessarily. Sometimes they did, but it didn't always look like this. More often we had some kids on the couch, some kids on the floor, some when they were young, not so much in their bedroom, but as they got older, some of them would prefer to work in their rooms. But I do want to point out a number of things in this photo because I think it's valuable. This is some of the artwork that our children did. So they would do artwork. This child needed help, so she always sat here because there were special reminders for her at this point on the wall. Here is a program plan for this student. Here is the program plan for that student, so that they could easily look at what they were doing. The little one had her own coloring so that she felt like she was a part of what we were doing, even if she really wasn't. And I would find a book for any child who's young so that they can work in it, because if you don't provide them with one, at some point they're going to grab this child's book and he's not going to be happy. So when they have their own schoolwork, they're much happier. And again, go to the dollar store, buy something for fun so that little child has something to do. This one is working on advanced math through this book, and this one is working on grammar. Really lots going on. This is a piece of artwork that we did. You know, there's so much going on in here, and we actually had this space dedicated to our homeschooling because at some point I got really tired of cleaning off the kitchen table every day. So I just left this area for our homeschooling. But you may not have that space, and that's fine. You do what you do in your home. When you're developing your program plan, write out your educational goals that we talked about. If you feel overwhelmed, like I have shared too much information, we're going to be putting this video, this workshop on our website, so you can go back and review little pieces if you want. But write down those things that you decided were important to you, things that you wanted to work on, and write your plan. I would buy a book. This is any old daily planning book, and I would I would have one for each child, and I would glue my child's goals or program plan right into it so that they could see it, and even more importantly, so that I could grab their book and see it as well. This is just, this is a sample program plan, but I can tell you that what I like to do personally was I like to highlight things when they were done. And I planned out way more stuff than we ever got to. But I personally just loved highlighting something when it was done. It made me just feel good when we could do that. I would write in the margins extra things that we do. And at the end of the year, I just crossed off the things that we never got to. So your plan will look like your plan will look. It doesn't have to be significant, but it's there for you to help you to be focused and to accomplish your goals. Evaluate your student. We spent a lot of time last night talking about the significance of evaluation. Monitoring your child's progress is for you to know where they are. It serves you as the parent. You can use the Canadian Test of Basic Skills if you want to do testing, your provincial tests, unit tests. You can simply observe your child and make notes. Keep a portfolio of their work. I encourage you to do that. And keep dated samples of their work. It's important for you to have those evaluative tools and to keep them for records. I also encourage you not to be bound to your curriculum. When things aren't working, adjust your plans. Take a break. Sometimes all you need to do is change things up. Plan a field trip. Have a games day. I'm going to share a day that started out as a horrible day in our homeschooling and ended up being a wonderful day. My children woke up and none of them wanted to work. And none of them were doing anything that I desired for them. And I yelled at them and you have to do your work and none of you are doing anything. And And then I stepped back because it was a really bad day. And I went, this is silly. None of us can do this. It was probably February, which is a real difficult time for me in the homeschooling year. And I ended up pulling out games, and we ended up spending the rest of the day just playing games for fun. And that day ended up refreshing us so much. It ended up rebuilding our relationship because I was damaging it that morning. It built our relationship. We had so much fun that day that I can say it's probably one of our significantly memorable days homeschooling. Not because we accomplished lots of stuff, but because we worked on character, and my character, and we worked on our children's character, and we took a break from work that was becoming overwhelming so that the next day the kids could approach it and they weren't overwhelmed anymore. It was a very valuable day. So sometimes just taking a break is what you need. Sometimes trying a different approach is important. Have dad try and teach, use a YouTube video. And sometimes you will try a new curriculum. You will try a new way of doing things. Don't be a slave to your curriculum. It's there to serve you, not for you to serve it. Record your students' progress. Write down how they're doing. This serves you as the parent, serves government agencies if they have questions, provides evidence of progress in case of a challenge to your education. If you ever have a legal challenge, having a membership with HSLD, with homeschool.today gives you access to a lawyer. So if there's ever a legal challenge or someone, a social worker is at your door, all you have to do is call homeschool.today and they will be there to assist you in a home education when there's home education questions. So yeah, so most importantly, relax. Homeschooling really is great. Once you've got things laid out and planned, relax, jump in, and reap the benefits of homeschooling because there really are so many. Your children and your relationship will grow, will flourish. Your children's relationships with any other siblings they have will grow and flourish. Relationship building is one of the best parts of homeschooling. If you need further assistance, which you will during your homeschooling time, connect with other homeschoolers, find other homeschoolers you can be with, connect with a support group, a small group, see if there's something in your local area where you can connect with one or two other moms. Sometimes that's all you need is just one or two other people to connect with. And then you may connect with a larger group like we did when we were doing our homeschool sports. Each province is going to have a provincial association that you could join. And then HSLDA, again, I know I've talked about that quite a number of times, but HSLDA is here to help you. So we had a workshop yesterday that will be, that will be available online. We have a workshop tomorrow on homeschooling junior high and high school youth. So please feel free to take advantage of those. And that is the end of my presentation. So Peter is going to moderate questions now. So don't leave.
Thanks, Patty. Thanks so much for that. That was great. So yeah, I have a few questions here that our
Okay.
participants have passed on in the chat. And if you have a question that you'd like answered, just enter it in the chat now, and we'll try to get to it as well. Okay. So one question that I've had from several people, and I'll just answer it because it's fairly simple, is
Okay.
was last night's presentation, is it going to be available? I missed it or I couldn't see all of it. And the answer to that is simply yes. It will be posted on the homeschool.today website in the next few days, along with this seminar, and we'll also post tomorrow nights as well if you're not able to make it tomorrow night. Of course, everybody will want to make it tomorrow night if they've got kids who are hitting junior high or high school, because you want that information right away. You don't want to have to wait a few days for it. So we'll look forward to seeing people tomorrow night at the same time on that subject. Okay, so let's go to some of the questions we had, Patty. One question we had was, the plan you referred to, is it made weekly, monthly? Is it a year-long plan? What are you referring to there? And maybe the answer is more than one of those.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that?
So the plan that I talked about developing over the course of the weekend was a year plan, sort of a year overview, so that I knew the main things that we were going to do in that year. Depending on the age of the child, when I had little kids, very little kids, I would write in their book each day some of the things that I desired for them to do, and they would check off what they had done. When they got older, they were in the habit of seeing that, but I stopped writing it, and they would actually just know what they needed to do, and then they would write in every day what they did. At some point, sometimes it was at some point in the year, sometimes it was just as they got older, they no longer kept daily record of what they were doing. And so we stopped with the daily plans as they got older. I would say yearly plans.
No, already.
And when they were older, like in high school, for example, we may have one book that we use. So like maybe an apologia biology, human anatomy course that actually took us the whole year. And so at that point, I would lay out the weekly plan, what I had hoped to accomplish each week, so that we could be finished it by the end of the year. And in doing that at the beginning of the year, it made it very easy for us to complete our year. But if you don't get to it right away, that's okay. If you don't get to it today or next week, don't feel like my year is done. You have time to do that.
Okay, great. Another question here is, do you have some tips for teaching multiple grades simultaneously? And of course, this is going to be the case for anybody who has more than one child, pretty much. What are some tips that you might have in that area, Patty?
Yeah, I'd say cover the same material would be one of my main points. So to have one child do China, have another child to do, Greece, and another one doing Rome is just overwhelming and daunting, and it's going to be too much. So study the same material, read the same books. The little kids will stick around for the older kids' novels. And I had 17-year-olds who used to lean against the wall when I read the material to the younger kids because they were too old to be there anymore. But they hung out around the corner to listen in because they still wanted to participate. So do it all at once. And historical fiction, like reading together, is a great way to do things, to do homeschooling. Like I said, and you can have your whole flock together doing it.
Great. Okay. Another question: what age would you start reading poetry to your child or your children?
Oh, little children, because you can start with some really fun stuff. Some people may not like Shel Silverstein, but they just have fun little poems. Actually, Dr. Seuss's poetry, Green Eggs and Ham, poetry is fun from little, and you just read a little bit, and I used to have a plan where I would read, and mostly for me because I would forget to do it. You know, I would pick a poem and make sure that I read a poem or two every day or every week. I would maybe set a day on Wednesdays was our poetry day, and so I made sure to read a couple poems during our reading on that day. So yeah, so just adjust it by level. It doesn't have to be, you know, the Iliad or Shakespeare or something really complex. It can be really fun little things, and then, you know, moving as you grow.
Yeah, we did a lot of poetry too, and we'd encourage memorization. And one year,
Mm.
and the kids can be quite young, as you said, and even young children can memorize a lot of lines, a lot of poems, and they'll stick with them for a long time. So it's valuable. Okay,
That that became a part of our family presentations too with grandma and grandpa, because sometimes grandma and grandpa question, you know, what you're doing. And so when grandma and grandpa would come and we go, hey, we have a little, you know, a fun time, and some would sing a song and some would recite poetry. Yeah, those are great opportunities to memorize and to share with questioning family.
exactly. Okay, so here's another one. Does it matter what math we pick or how we teach the kids? Is there a certain way to teach so they can use it in school? And I'm guessing from that question, this might be a family that's thinking, I'm only planning to home educate this particular year. You know, am I taking a risk if I move away from the provincial curriculum this year to another math course? Will my kids be quote unquote left behind if they return to the public system in a year's time?
Yeah. So I would say conceptualization is really important in math. So understanding concepts, understanding addition, understanding, you know, division, um, multiplication, all of those kinds of things, fractions. It's really important that kids understand it. I know that many provinces have different approaches to math and the way students do math. And many provinces actually do multiple ways of math learning. So maybe your way of math learning is one of those ways. You may want to check out the information at homeschool.today to see if there are specific requirements in your province for specific methods of teaching something. My guess is that most provinces will not have specific methods that you must adhere to, but concept understanding is probably more what's desired.
Excellent. Okay, we've got some more fun questions here. This one's a great one. How can we help, in quotes, social butterfly kids to thrive? One of my two children loves school, not for the learning, but for his friends. This is going to be a tough sell. How do you answer that?
Yeah, well, like I said last night, developing friendships within your family becomes very significant. So if your child has siblings, those relationships, you know, may be a little tense. One thing that I shared last night that is that there is often a deschooling time that many new homeschoolers go through. And it can be a very challenging and difficult time. The good news is that all of you have already been through that with COVID. You have done that very difficult, intense time when your students aren't happy. Some of you may have experienced it more intensely than others. The good news is that it's pretty much uphill from here. So those relationships with siblings will get better. The relationships with you will get better. But for kids who want to maintain those relationships with their friends, then make that a part of your priority. Make it a plan that you will get together with their friends once a week, maybe at the beginning. Make a plan so that your child feels like they can still stay connected with some of their friends. It'll be different, but it's still connections.
Yeah. Okay. Now I've got two questions here, and they're sort of at both ends of I think the same issue ultimately. One is about do you have recommendations for curriculum for kids who are advanced in their learning, maybe perhaps beyond their years? And the other was, what about resources for kids who might have a learning disability or other special needs? So we've got that whole spectrum there. Kids who are not necessarily average; they're somewhere else. What's available? The school system's often a little bit of a one-size-fits-all system. We're all using the same book, I guess. But what do you have to say about home education in that regard?
Yeah, I'd say, you know what, it's fairly easy. You just adjust. So if you have a challenged learner who maybe hasn't yet grasped last year's concepts, then use the material that's appropriate for last year. Just because your child's in grade 3 doesn't mean you need to purchase a grade 3 curriculum. Use material that is appropriate to where they are in the learning. So if you have an advanced student, then just move on. Once they understand concepts, you can move on to more advanced concepts. You can challenge them with more difficult problems. So it's not a matter of grade 3 material that's for challenged students or advanced students. It's just kind of about continuing more on a fluid sort of thing, slow down or speed up.
Right. Okay. And for kids who do have a serious learning disability or a special need, and traditional curriculum, even regular homeschooling curriculum, whether it's advanced or at an earlier age, is not appropriate for them. There are some resources available, aren't there? It's not just sort of a void we're talking about. HSLDA, for example, has a special needs advisor. So if you're a member of HSLDA, you get a free consultation with that advisor, and they can help you with evaluations and perhaps giving you the resources you need to get diagnosis or other help and evaluations for your child. So there's another place to look for folks that have questions about special needs children.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And just there's several more questions that popped in here, so just give me 3 seconds. Quick question: can we read books on fantasy, or does it have to be real life all the time?
Oh no, enjoy the fantasy. Oh, Fairy Dust and the Quest for the Egg was one of my favorite books. Oh no, it can be just fun because you get your children just in tuned with listening and with hearing a great story and just enjoying it. That's what literature is about. It's about enjoying it. So no, enjoy all of those different types of literature.
Yeah, it'd be hard to imagine home education without a little bit of Tolkien or C.S. Lewis. Or
Yes.
so that's a great question, and thanks for that.
Yeah, the Chronicles of Narnia had our families engaged for, a long time.
Yeah. All right. Here's a more serious question about philosophy of education, I guess, if I can call it that. So the question is it beneficial to give students freedom of choice when possible to keep them engaged? So, yeah, are we following a rigid schedule and curriculum here, or can our kids have some choice of their own and some flexibility? What do you think, Patty?
Oh, we often, when I was doing my program plan, before I even started, I would say to my kids, is there anything you want to study this year? Is there anything that you're interested in? Or I would just notice things that they were interested in. And then we would study those. So no, your kids can be very active participants in their learning. You as the parents are responsible for their learning, but they can be very active participants.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Going back to the sort of the planning question that we had earlier, this is sort of drilling down into the details just a little bit more. What about planning for a day or your week? Do you sort of set a schedule, and what does that look like? Do you make the schedule? If you do make a schedule, when do you make it? Do you make it on the weekend, or do you make it every second week? And I imagine the answer can be different for different people. But what did you do, and what do you find? What did you find was effective?
Yeah, sometimes, some years, some years when I was doing our plan, I would actually set out a weekly schedule and say, and a weekly schedule in that, Monday's going to be science day. I'd look at all the things that we needed to do. We did a lot of sports in our family. So we would have a lot of sporting time. So I had to fit things in. Some of our kids babysat during the day as part of their, when they were 12 and 13. So Wednesday morning was never a time when we could do academics because they were volunteering and babysitting. So I would set out a weekly schedule. Monday we're going to do math and science and this, and Tuesday we're going to do this, Wednesday we're going to do this. So that made things fairly easy in terms of scheduling. And then I may just have to plug things in. It would be nice to do it, on Friday night. Often I was doing it Monday morning. So, just as it really depends on who you are as a person too. If you need a highly structured, highly organized environment, you're going to spend more time doing that, and you're going to make sure you do that. If you feel more comfortable just sort of going, what are we doing today? Then you don't need that so much. So it really depends on who you are.
Exactly. Okay. That's good. And that might be news for a lot of people watching tonight, that they don't have to follow kind of a traditional, we're going to do this subject for 15 minutes and the next subject for half an hour, and we have to do that every day. As you say, you could do a day that's just focused on science and another day that's focused on another subject. And yeah. So
I want to share one more day with you
okay.
from our life. My husband came home from work and he said, "What did you do today?" And I said, "We read one paragraph from the book I had planned." And he said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, because we got so stimulated by that paragraph that we ended up going to YouTube videos. We ended up exploring this country and figuring out what it was all about, looking at the economics of it, looking at how they drilled what they were doing." So when I say we read one paragraph, it meant one paragraph of what I planned, but it was a whole day of exploring and learning. It was a fabulous, fabulous educational day.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Another question is I'll just read it. It says, is the 3-hour school day, that's in quotes, more because the kids are learning the way they learn best? And that says compared to 8 hours in public school. So yeah, why is it 3 hours, and why can you do as much in 3 hours at home as it maybe takes a full day to do in the public system? What's that all about?
Yeah. Well, I think that in brick and mortar schools, there's a lot of time that's filled with other activities. So you have, okay, so none of my children were in brick and mortar school. So I'm going back to my days now. But you have a lot of time where there's assemblies or where there's, Christmas production gatherings where you're doing announcements, where students are waiting for other kids to do things, where teachers aren't sure what to do, so they have you do 600 essays on one subject. Those things aren't necessary when you're homeschooling. Some of those filler things take up a lot of time, and there's a lot of filler activities as well that you may not have to do. And some of you may be familiar with those, having done the few months of schooling at home where you go, I don't even know why my kids are doing this stuff. And those are the sort of filler activities that take up a lot of time that you don't necessarily have to do.
Right. Okay. There's a question here. does the Ministry of Education send learning goals that homeschoolers have to adhere to as use as guidelines? And of course, this is going to depend very much on the province you're in. What I'd say to the individual who asked that, and if others have that question, HSLDA is the place to go for that kind of advice. Now, folks might be wondering why we refer to HSLDA all the time, but the fact of the matter is it's the national homeschooling organization. It's the only one in Canada. They do have the experienced staff and the lawyers and the experts and the resources we were talking about, Patty, like the digital library, the special needs advisor, and so on. So for people who are looking for somebody to give them real support along the journey, HSLDA is certainly the place they want to find that support.
And I think that's when you're talking about HSLDA, provincial education mandates do come, they're laws, right? So the legislation, the laws around that's why HSLDA is so valuable in being able to help figure those things out.
Exactly. Okay, well, we're coming right to the end here. We've got just a few minutes left. Again, we will be posting the video on homeschool.today website in the next few days, and you can get last night's there as well in the next few days. And we'll be returning tomorrow with talk on junior high and high school with Patty again, same time. But let me just ask you these questions. This question is as a final sort of roundup question. Tell us about some of your favorite curriculums. There's some that I'm sure you've enjoyed over the years, particularly, and found real delight in. They may not be, things you used necessarily for your main subjects. Maybe you just found a special book or a special series, something you really enjoyed. Can you tell us a few of those things?
Well, sure. You put me on the spot. Okay, I love math. I really do. I love math. So I loved Singapore math because I found it challenging, but well done. So I love Singapore math. I also love teaching textbooks because it's easy. So that's a math curriculum. I really enjoyed reading books to our kids. Like we were talking about the Chronicles of Narnia. It was how we started every moment, every morning, is that we would gather on the couch. After we ate, we would gather on the couch. My flock would be around me, and we would just read. And the older kids, when I put the younger ones to bed, we would read and read. So novels, I would say, really are some of my favorite curriculum. Yeah, some of my least favorite curriculum. Oh no, I shouldn't tell you least favorite.
Okay. One final point is just sort of on economics, and that is, we're talking about buying books and buying curriculum for some folks, and you've already mentioned that we can do a lot of this for little or no cost if we choose, and public libraries are also a great resource in that regard. But some of us are going to invest in books for our kids, and they might be teachers guides or other books. It might be novels, whatever it is. Do we see a bit of a return on those down the road once we've used them? Is it possible to resell those? Homeschooling is a growing movement, so presumably there's demand. What have you found over the years, Patty? Have you been able to resell the books that you're finished with and recoup some of your investment that way?
Yes, for sure. Never sell a homeschool book at a garage sale. Never, because no one knows the value of it. I shouldn't say that. Some people know the value of it. That's why they scoop it up for 50 cents. Homeschoolers know the value of the books that you have. And so you can resell your good books, your good materials to other homeschoolers. In fact, I just finished selling a lot of my material and recouped a lot more money than I ever thought I would. Now, you don't get full price, but yes, you certainly can recoup good books. Like you get
so that
significant
upfront cost that we're seeing sometimes we can recognize that we can recoup some of that down the road. So that might be a help to some folks who are thinking about the cost involved here. All
Yes.
right. Well, thank you so much, Patty. It's been another great evening, and thank you so much for sharing with us again and sharing your own personal experience with your family as well. We're going to be back tomorrow, same time, to talk about junior high and high school, and I'm looking forward to that. And again, these will all be posted on homeschool.today in the next few days. If you can't make it tomorrow night, we'd still love to have you, but if you can't make it, you can tune in later. And of course, if you come tomorrow night, you can ask your questions and get them answered live. So, all right, we're going to sign off now, and we'll see everybody tomorrow.
Great.